Last week, I got to experience a good chunk of our community coming together and asking questions about AI. This was a NewportFILM organized event, a screening of the documentary, The AI Doc, or How I Became an Apocaloptimist, followed by a panel discussion that I moderated that you'll hear on Bartholomew Town in just a matter of moments. What was so powerful about this event, though, one, the film, as is often, in fact, always it seems to be the case with NewportFILM, was curated perfectly for the moment. You could feel the room. You could feel the energy inside the Pickens Theater, that you've got a curious, informed audience, but also a situation where there's just such a knowledge gap on AI for most people, which is totally understandable because I think there's a huge knowledge gap for people who are working on AI deeply every single day. And the fundamental tenet of this film, this documentary, which I recommend you watch if you're curious, was, hey, is AI going to destroy the world, or is AI going to make the world better than ever? So breaking this down on a hyper-local level and also obviously on a macro level, NewportFILM organized a tremendous panel that included David Altounian. He's an associate professor of business and economics at Salve, Regina University. Timothy Henry, the chair of computer science and information systems at the Institute for Cybersecurity and Emerging Technologies at Rhode Island College. Michael Littman, associate provost for artificial intelligence and a university professor of computer science at Brown University. And Briana, Vecchione, a technical researcher with the AI on the ground team at Data and Society Research Institute.
I think we should start by hyper-localizing the conversation and we'll go across the panel if we could. What's one thing that our community here, Quinnipiac Island, Rhode Island writ large, needs to know specifically how AI is impacting their life today?
I'm put on the spot. Well, without getting too nuanced about it, I think it really depends on who you are. I think it depends on what kind of AI you're interfacing with at work, you know. Are you in a job where you're seeing AI procurement? Are you seeing that affect your employment? Are you applying for jobs where there's AI behind the scenes, right? Are you on social media where you see AI every day? So yeah, I mean, these things are global, but also will affect different populations in different ways, for sure. But I think, you know, maybe one of the things that I did appreciate about the end of the movie was the emphasis on like collective action and the importance of community. And I'm really glad that we're having this conversation here today in a community-oriented way, because we can really talk about things on the ground that are specific to all your lives. And, you know, I think we're all really interested and excited to hear your questions. But yeah, I guess, you know, just being active in the community and really saying, you know, what do you want your future to be in relation to AI? I think that that's something that I'm going to really keep central to the conversation today.
I mean, so one of the things that I've been noticing is this seems to cut across a lot of different tasks that people are engaging with these generative AI systems to do, is that the systems are good, but they're not perfect. And you as a human being understanding what it is that you're trying to do and basically doing oversight on these systems is actually really critical. This seems to be across using these systems to write computer programs, using these systems to write documents, using these systems to create illustrations. When we talk to the experts who actually do that for a living, what they find is that these tools can help them, but they don't replace them. They're not actually good enough at these tasks to just do the work for them. And so there are these opportunities to work together, but it involves actually a lot of learning. So there's a lot for us to do if we want to unlock some of the powers of these, to roll up our sleeves and learn.
Right. And I think learning about them is really the key, is to the tools that you use, how you it impacts where you work. Really find out as much as you can about how it works where you know, in your occupation, in your life on a daily basis. Because the more you understand about the tool and about AI in general, the better you can advocate for what you feel needs to happen with it.
Yeah, and I would say AI is impacting our lives here every day. And I think saying we need to slow down on AI or we need to stop AI is unrealistic. It's the use cases we need to pay attention to. It would be like saying we should stop medicine because bad things happen. There are certain things in medicine and research we don't allow globally and locally because it creates harm. in AI, there are use cases you saw here that are going to create harm. And so we talk about collective action. I think the collective action needs to be around the specific AI use cases that we're worried about. For example, using AI to filter out resumes. The transparency idea there was great. We went through this and we did offshoring of call centers, and it was very unpopular after a while, even though a lot of jobs got removed until people said, no, I don't want to talk to an offshore person. If you knew that the AI that you were talking to was AI and it was transparent, people would hang up on it and they would go back to using people. So I would say the one thing about this that I loved was that ignorance is our biggest threat, not the AI. It's ignorance about the use cases and what it does. And so I think that's where we have the opportunity. This was, I thought, a great film for highlighting both sides.
No doubt community orientation is a backstop and a generator of AI technology at the same time, right? It serves as a regulator and it can advance the cause as well. But right now there's a tension point playing out nationally and globally. We're seeing it here in our state, which is on the regulatory side. Our Senate here in Rhode Island has tabled a discussion on regulation around AI data centers, for example. And we've introduced a statewide AI master plan as well. Where should AI be regulated in realistic terms? The idea of an international cooperative agreement seems as far-fetched as anything. So in realistic terms, is this something that state and municipal leaders should be thinking about? You can go in opposite order if you'd like, or if anyone wants to jump in.
So I think one of the most important pieces up there, and we had this conversation beforehand, was the geopolitical issue and incentives. And we need to understand the incentives. Domestically, states have different approaches and incentives than the federal government sometimes, depending on administration. But all we have to do is look at social media as a paradigm for this, and look at how China, Russia, the EU, and the US deals with social media regulation. And you can see we have a really big problem in the US. States are trying to do their own regulatory paths. The federal government seems to knock down any approach to regulating, while EU has very strict rules on privacy. Russia uses social media to control the population, where China talks about using social media to monitor, to maintain what they call harmony. So all regulatory goals are different. And so I do think that there needs to be some global environment. We had that for world health. We have it. We have it for nuclear arms. So I think there is those kind of things that are going to be required. But on the US, we're going to have to see. We haven't been able to do it well on social media. I don't know how we're going to do it well on AI.
So I agree that it would be great to have something at the global scale. My fear is the global AI arms race has already taken off after the war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza, and now the war in Iran. Autonomous devices are being used very frequently. They're advancing, and it's going to be very difficult to reach a global agreement right now, though I do believe that's what needs to happen. But it's going to take some major event, I think, to get people to the table.
We see things like technologies in surveillance, for example, Palantir and others. Right now, there's a program that was just released in Warwick, Rhode Island, where the police department is going to be using drones for what they claim are going to be emergency responses, so on and so forth. So we think of this on the battlefield in Ukraine, yet over a Best Buy in Warwick right now, similar technology without the killbot component is there. Is the cat out of the bag? Are we living in this Orwell-predicted world right now?
I don't think it's too late. I think, if we hold governments accountable for the decisions that they make, I think that this is why accountability is such a huge and important part of this conversation. Because, for a lot of these big companies, regulation and accountability, like maybe they have the assumption that, that's going to slow down progress. I actually think maybe this is a hot take, I think that, safe testing and third-party auditing, not, self-referential evaluation from within these companies, like that can actually strengthen our technology.
I like that line in the movie got an applause from the audience.
Yeah, we got some third-party testing, yeah!
It's not usually an applause line, but it was.
I know. As someone who's published on it, I'm like, but no, I actually think that it's, it can present as a weakness in terms of our national security to not have these kinds of really valuable safety evaluations. So that's just one way I want to.
Are you looking to advance in your career or explore a new field? The University of Rhode Island now offers a comprehensive portfolio of fully online programs designed to bring world-class education to you anytime, anywhere. Choose from a wide range of flexible asynchronous programs in business and leadership, data, tech, and STEM, healthcare and pharmacy, marine and environmental sciences, and much more. With expert faculty and innovative courses, you'll gain the skills and knowledge to thrive in today's competitive world. Ready to take the next step? Visit uri.edu/online and discover how URI Online can help you achieve your goals. URI Online. Learn anywhere with us.
You and your employees work hard for your customers. At HealthSource RI for Employers, we work hard for all of you. We offer access to 18 quality health insurance plans plus dental, flexible costs to meet your budget and get your staff what they need, and customized local support to guide you through it all. More than 1,200 Rhode Island employers choose health insurance through us. HealthSource RI. We work for you. HealthSourceRI.com/employers.
And I think that's one place locally we can do it, is we can establish what we want to vet, what we want to accept in each of these different areas.
One more before we go to Q&A, if that's okay? Just a quick kind of, almost like this is a social media type of answer right here. Are you an optimist or a pessimist that before the end of the life of a person born today who would have a normal human lifespan, are you optimist in that time frame or pessimist that the world will devolve into near or actual apocalypse? Or will we be in a position where most people have found a pathway forward where menial tasks, the quality of life is raised, etc. Which side is it?
So one thing I want to point out, I came in thinking I was going to hate the movie, but I really liked the movie. I thought it was extremely well done. The through line with the baby was just perfect. And but that said, I feel like every single person that got interviewed was an extremist. And I think there's so much space, because they're like, there's this poll and there's this poll. And there was a person who was like, oh yeah, I think both polls are wrong. They're just not extreme enough. I'm like, oh my gosh, even the person who's being in the middle is too extreme. So I think there's so many more people who are involved in this and who are studying it and are trying to help the world navigate it that are seeing much more nuance between these two poles of like Apocaloptimism, right? And so I wanted to point that out, because there were certainly moments in the film where I thought like the thing that was said, we were all reacting to it, but it was like, yeah, but that's crazy, right? Like that's not really what I think most people think are actually gonna happen. So that said, I think in terms of like us surviving the next human lifespan, I'm gonna call myself an optimist. I think we can do. We've done it before. We'll do it again.
Optimist, pessimist, or we'll qualify a new category, moderate.
Yeah, you're not gonna like my answer, Bill. I'm not a doomer, right? Like I definitely think that there are really valuable, discrete uses of AI that have been inarguably valuable for the future of science, and there have been some great outcomes. I'm not an optimist because, well, you saw the movie. So yeah, I think it's like a very huge qualifier. Like it really just depends on like how we want this to proceed. So I'm going to take the middle road. Sorry.
So let me jump in, because I think I have 2 points on this. First of all, when ChatGPT came out about 3 years ago, AGI was something people said would be 10 or 20 years. I don't know if you saw it yesterday or this morning. Jensen Wang said we've hit AGI basic now. He made that claim today, which is, if you saw the movie, a little bit spooky. First point. Second point is, this all talked about the engines. What it was really missing, and they only touched on, was the robots. The thing that concerns me is the convergence with AI, with systems. And you got a little bit, you talked about the brain, you talked about the robots and autonomous vehicles. I think just like we talked about use cases, I'm really concerned about the connecting of these devices and convergence of AI with something else. So I would say I am absolutely, whatever that word was. I'm very excited about the promise, and I'm very concerned about its misuse.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm an optimist about the actual technology and the tools. My concern is more the people that use it. And as I thought through that from a global scale, I think it's in the global interest for each of the different countries to keep limits on it, because they're not going to want it to get out of control, because they'll lose control. And part of the reason they're using it is because they want control. So I'm not too worried about that. It's more the way people locally are going to use it. But I do feel that we'll figure that one out, because it's more about us, and we'll be able to work through that. So I tend to be an optimist.
I would say, and talked about it here, unfortunately, our human nature is that we have to wait for something really bad to happen to crack down. Even, nuclear wasn't until after, Hiroshima and Nagasaki did the world realize they had to get together. And I do have a little bit of concern that something bad is going to have to happen for everybody to get together. But the sooner that they get together, the more optimistic I am about our future.
Let's go to the audience for Q&A.
All right, in the front.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, Valerie.
So, from my perspective, so when I was in graduate school, I did research on neural networks, which is kind of related to AI. And in my past life, when I say past life, because I retired last year, I managed technology collaboration at a DoD laboratory that developed autonomous systems and weapons, and of course AI is very much involved in that. And I guess I would say that I'm an apocalyptic. If I could say that word, I would say that that's what I am. But my big concern, and someone mentioned that ignorance is the biggest problem. It's it's in the interest of a small group of people to control this technology. The technology, like any other technology, it's a tool. It's not inherently good or bad. It's like every other technology that humankind has developed. It can be used for good, it can be used for evil. But the problem is that it's in the interest of certain people to control it, to use it to manipulate people. And ultimately, the goal, as it's always been, is to concentrate wealth and power in the hands of a few people. What I'm really concerned is that, what's going on in our country, where in a little over a year, we've seen a lot of, we've seen a big movement from democracy toward an authoritarian society, and manipulating and controlling the press, taking away freedom and so forth. I'm not sure how we are going to get through this. I don't think we can't rely on our government to do anything. For example, a company that was featured prominently in this documentary, Anthropic, they have government contracts. They stipulated that their technology could not be used for surveillance of the American people, and it could not be used to be implemented in fully autonomous weapons. And so the response of the Trump administration was to say, Anthropic is a threat to the supply chain, and it's a threat to national security. I think ultimately it's going to take some kind of a bottom-up movement to overcome this, but I don't, as I'm saying these thoughts to myself, I'm becoming less and less of the optimist and more of the apocalypse. So I don't know, maybe I'm looking for one of you to kind of assuage me or to convince us that there is hope.
Can I just say real quick, because I think this last piece is really important. When I started watching the movie, I teach Intro to AI for Business. I have students here. I teach a PhD class on AI problems and perspectives. And I sat here at the beginning of the movie, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And then by the end of the movie, I said, the people here that are working on this, that are teaching, are doing a service. Because the same people that control are the ones that want to keep us ignorant. And so the more that we're educating people on how to use this, the more you're going to be able to have the collective action. So I actually feel a little bit better now. But yeah, I think your point is right. It is something we've got to make sure we educate people, give them agency.
Next question.
So, I think this is less a question. I think the debate is actually moot. The horse has left the stable, right? I think the concern is more about what we're doing for our young people. So our students, K through 12, are entering a world in which AI is ubiquitous, right? The future is now. And so I'm wondering for the panel is, what does this mean for education? What does this mean for K-12 learning, right? What does this mean for students pursuing their purpose and passion in a world where what we thought education was is no longer what education is? And so I'd love a conversation about what does this mean for schools K-12 right now?
Yeah, so I can't speak directly to K-12, but we're at, 13 to 17. So at the college level, this has been extremely disruptive, right? So one of the main ways that we evaluate students is we give them questions and we ask them to write their answers down and give them to us. Except now questions aren't questions, they're prompts, right? You can just take that same text that a professor writes or an instructor writes and feed it directly into a chatbot and get back, not a terrible answer, like a very coherent often and relevant answer. One of the things that we're seeing is they're actually not great answers, but they're really well constructed. And it used to be that the students who actually knew what they were doing were the ones who were creating well-structured answers. And so we could just grade based on, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. That turns out to not work anymore, right? Because now you can make something that's just wrong, but sounds great. And so that means that we have to fundamentally change the way that we structure assessment and engagement. And so it's one of the biggest fears that we have now on campus, and I'll try to get back to K-12 in a second, but is the notion that the students who are using these tools exclusively and feel like they're doing something productive are not learning anything. They're not actually engaging their cognitive processes and doing the thing that caused them, past students to actually gain knowledge and gain understanding and gain the ability to work through problems. I think this is, at the K-12 level, this is even a bigger threat, right? Because by the time we get the students at the college level, we're counting on them having had that sort of foundational understanding of how to be a student, how to actually learn new material, how to show that you know it. And that's being a little bit taken away from us. And so, somebody needs to fix the K-12 thing.
Well, I can help out a little bit with that. Over the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of AI K-12 professional development and working with faculty as they're struggling through this. Because they know the horse is out of the barn, you've got to...
And doing a backflip from the diving board.
And so the first step is to teach teachers about artificial intelligence, how to use it, and what the risks are of the tool, what the pros are of it, and the appropriate times to use it. And then the next step is to, how do we incorporate this into the K-12 curriculum in the right way, at the right levels for the students, depending on what age they're at. And a big part of the education about AI, not just educating students using AI, but educating K-12 about artificial intelligence, is educating them about the risks and the reality of it. In other words, letting them know from an early age, this is a tool. It may sound and feel like a person, but it is not. Teaching them how safely to use it. Similar to how when we started teaching cybersecurity in schools, the first thing is don't share your password with anybody or your username with anybody. Same thing with artificial intelligence is don't give it personal information about yourself. And so we're working on that, and I know RIDE is working to come up with standards in the next year for K-12, and Rhode Island is actually a little bit ahead of the curve on that nationally. So it is a problem, we are working on it in the state.
Let's take that to ultimately the social aspect of this, the interaction that is actually not coming from textbook, the education that comes from outside of the actual coursework. How does this disrupt that?
I mean, yeah, a lot of what, my fellow brilliant panelists have said, I agree with. We have like cognitive offloading, which is the term that, we will use when we're talking about how, instead of using your brain to do a thing, you're offloading that to something else, which is extremely important, right, if you're talking about kids. And if they don't have the skills that they need to be learning, then they just don't develop those skills. I mean, I've recently seen articles about how, certain schools are just reverting back to pen and paper, computers, pen and paper. Yeah, I mean, I guess for reference, some of the work that I do now, I look at how people are using large language models for social and emotional use, therapists, companions, things like that. So obviously, there are attachments that are built there. And we see, we've seen in these like horrific cases of like suicide, that some of these kids are like particularly vulnerable. Full transparency, Adam Rain was from my hometown in Southern California, so that one like hit particularly quite literally close to home. But yeah, I mean, this is another like very clear example of why we need like accountability and regulation in these spaces, because children are so impressionable. It's difficult for them to know overall that they haven't lived in for that long. So, we really need to be responsible as the adults in the room and say, like, this is not okay. We can't be deploying this, and we can't be letting our children use it in this way.
And all that at the same time as schools in Texas are going full AI, so there's also that debate as well, also overseas. There are scenarios where it's one-on-one with computer. We have time for one more question. Who's that going to be? We got 30,000 hands and one question. I'm not making that decision.
I'm wondering.
Oh no. We're going to call that draw. We'll do two more.
I'm wondering if the allocation of resources is going to be the first thing that we really see happening. As Anthropic makes computer scientists no longer computer programmers, so everybody's getting laid off. And all of these data centers are taking all of our energy. Now, you're paying more if you're living in a certain city. So what if you could regulate the big guys all paying back to society to take care of those problems?
I feel like then we're back to accountability, right? So one of the things that and we're done. So one of the things that I think is really, like, we should keep in mind when we see these giant data centers being built, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're concentrating all this power and control. They're only building these big things because they want to tap into all of us. Like, they really are, they're powered by us. And we could just say no, or we could just insist, yes, okay, we'll play this game, but here are the rules. Here's what we demand to be a part of this system. They're not doing this without us. They're doing this kind of at us, and to take opportunity of us as a resource, to take our resources. And so, yeah, I think we need to pay attention to that. We need to remember that this really is about us, and we have a say in the way that it gets implemented.
Last question.
Yes, I'm author Altounian Borges. I wrote a book on annihilation of a planet, hence the name for artificial intelligence. And basically, in my book, the nucleus is how AI overcomes mankind's capacity of thinking. Then they feel the need, we are no longer needed, to basically what the movie here portrayed, documentary, I should say. But as we're speaking now, already 50% of the administrative work have been laid off. Another 3 or 5 years, it'll be 100%. So as we're talking, I want to challenge the panel here. What do you have in mind to help mankind earn a paycheck, to have money to buy a home, to buy a vehicle, just to have the necessities of food and water? Artificial intelligence do not need to be fed. They don't need H2O. I've spoken about this before. They just need a little broom closet, and they could just remain there for the day and night, and adverse back to work, where we need vital nutrition in order to survive, and to allow AI to work in our farms. Eventually, they could yield the crops that they wanted for us to have and cause a shortage. Same thing with water. And so that's where we're at. That's what my book's about, Annihilation of a Plan. I'm not here to promote it, but I talk about all the importance about AI.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, first of all, AI technically does need water, right? Because they're building all these data centers. They are physically located somewhere. But I think that, again, like, not to hammer this back home to everything that we've been saying, but like, this is a question around like process and accountability. Like, yes, in a world where everybody is laid off, which, like, frankly, I do not even want to put that kind of like just blanket statement out there. I think that there's a lot more nuance to that, so I really, please don't hang on any of that. There needs to be processes for the ways that people are going to live their lives and be able to afford food. I definitely agree with that. I think, not to speak for everybody, I think everyone agrees with that, right? We had like a brief conversation around, like UBI is something that is like maybe a supplement. But one of the things that I would really love to see in this administration, and even for these companies, right, is like, what is the plan here, right? Like, are you just going to displace everybody? Is the plan that you just displace everybody and then like all the power is concentrated in like the hands of the few, and then everybody goes home, right? Like, this is not, like, we need a plan, and I think the gap here is that no one is talking about really concretely what that plan is.
Just really quick, when we talk about AGI and super intelligence, it's not like there's one big brain that's going to be running everything. There's going to be a lot of little tiny brains that have a very limited amount of control, and also there'll be little tiny brains from XAI, ChatGPT, or OpenAI, Anthropic, and they're all going to be competing against each other. So I think it's going to take a while for any one to take control. So.
Yeah, I would say I've been, before I was an academic, I was in the technology role for about 35 years. I've been through many of these. I don't subscribe to the fact that all jobs are going to go away and it's all going to be there. Humanity has too many problems to solve that we have not solved. The rising oceans, getting out to outer space. How are we going to do all these things? If any of you are old enough to remember when PCs came out and COBOL and Fortran started to go away, all of these programmers were getting laid off. You look 5 years later, and there were so many more programmers that were writing in third and fourth generation languages, just doing totally different. I think it goes back to the accountability, and it goes back to the piece of the use case regulatory work of how do we make sure that we're not getting rid of jobs that we need to get rid of. And as someone said in the movie, I think, keeping the human in the equation. I don't want AI doing all of my medical work. I want a doctor to be involved, at least at some point. And we can't get specialists, we can't get in here in the state, I can't get a primary care physician. So if this allows primary care physicians to get more patients, then I think it's good. And so I think we just got to think about how we manage the way it's deployed in the jobs they'll take, or it will do what you say. I think that's the risk.
And there's also the element of holding companies accountable for what we're starting to talk about now, not just within AI specialization, but in economics and politics in general, AI washing, where you have these mass layoffs that are happening, and they say, well, it's because of AI, when it may in fact not be. And that piece of accountability is just as important, so we can really understand what the trends are going, and we're not just seeing companies saying, well, let's save some money and blame AI.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Briana, Michael, Tim, David, Daniel. Thank you so much. A lot for you to come out and
Financial well-being on Bartholomew Town, presented by Navigant Credit Union. Visit navigantcu.org.
Hey, Bill, great to see you again. And I'm Mike Matone. I'm the Senior Vice President, Chief Retail Banking and Experience Officer at Navigant.
Rhode Island Anchor Home. It's a program that helps 40-plus Rhode Island families buy their first homes. What is Navigant's role in this Rhode Island Anchor Home program?
Yeah, so Navigant is proud to be a part of the Rhode Island Anchor Home program. It's an amazing program that launched last December, designed to help Rhode Islanders achieve their dream of home ownership by lowering cost barriers associated with buying a home. The General Treasurer, James Diosa, in his office, they created the program in partnership with local institutions like Navigant. We've been proud to partner with his inception. At the end of the day, it is, there is inventory issues with housing in Rhode Island. Mortgage, 30-year fixed mortgage rates continue to remain high relative to where they've been over the last few years. Inflation outpaces income growth. So with building this program, it's a way where a first-time home buyer can achieve that dream and in the long run save money, right? Instead of being a forever renter, so to speak, or not having access to the housing market and to build generational wealth. 30-year fixed rates, interest rates starting at 3.99, subject to market conditions. No PMI, which is really important, so that additional tacked-on payment isn't there from the from a monthly payment perspective.
There's a lot of talk about people coming up with money for a down payment. There's also closing costs. Does this program help with closing costs and that down payment?
Yep, there is down payment and closing cost assistance with the Rhode Island Anchor Home Program. There's also homeownership counseling, HUD-approved homeownership counseling that happens through your home buying process. So not only are you going to get assistance with the down payment and closing costs, you're also going to get additional tools and resources to make sure that you can afford that and maintain that home over the course of living in that home.
Why is it important from an investment in the community standpoint for the institution, for Navigant to be involved in programs like this?
Yeah, it's important for Navigant to be involved in programs like this, Bill, because this is the fabric of who we are, right? Credit unions are founded on the principle of people helping people. And for over 100 years, starting as a credit union in Central Falls, we've built and worked on programs to help Rhode Islanders achieve their financial well-being. I think one of the stories that we shared with the treasurer is that we had a registered nurse who's a member of Navigant, got her first home through the Rhode Island Anchor Home Program. She's the first in her family generationally to own a home, right? Someone who's a hardworking member of the community who's going to give back to the community in a very meaningful way through their work and through being a member of the community. And it helps build those communities and help them grow, right? In the short term and in the long term. That is what Navigant's mission and our values are, right? Is helping the Rhode Island communities thrive. And this program allows us to help Rhode Islanders be a part of that growth in their local market.
Financial well-being is presented by Navigant Credit Union. Visit navigantcu.org.